The story of Cesar Chavez. The story of Cesar Estrada Chavez begins near Yuma, Arizona. Cesar was born on March 31st, 1927. He was named after his grandfather, Cesario. Regrettably, the story of Cesar Estrada Chavez also ends near Yuma, Australia. He passed away on April 23, 1993, in St. Louis, a small village near Yuma, Arizona. He learned about justice, or rather injustice, early in his life. Cesar grew up in Arizona. The small adobe home where Cesar was born was swindled from them by dishonest Anglos. Cesar's father agreed to clear 80 acres of land, and in exchange he would receive the deed to 40 acres of land that adjoined the home. The agreement was broken, and the land sold to a man named Justus Jackson. Cesar's dad went to a lawyer who advised him to borrow money and buy the land. Later, when Cesar's father could not pay the interest on the loan, the lawyer bought back the land and sold it to the original owner. Cesar learned a lesson about injustice that he would never forget. Later, he would say, "The love for justice that is in us is not only the best part of our being, but it is also the most true to our nature." In 1938, he and his family moved to California. He lived in La Colona barrio in Oxnard for a short period, returning to Arizona several months later. They returned to California in June 1939, and this time settled in San Jose. They lived in the barrio called Sal Si Puedes, get out if you can. Cesar thought the only way to get out of the circle of poverty was to work his way up and send the kids to college. He and his family worked in the fields of California, from Barley to Oxnard, Atascadero, Gonzales, King City, Salinas, McFarland, Delano, Wasco, Selma, Kingsburg, and Mendota. He did not like school as a child, probably because he spoke only Spanish at home. The teachers were mostly Anglo and only spoke English. Spanish was forbidden in school. He remembers being punished with a ruler to his knuckles for violating the rule. He also remembers that some schools were segregated, and he had felt that in the integrated schools he was like a monkey in a cage. He remembers having to listen to a lot of racist remarks. He remembers seeing signs that read whites only. He and his brother Richard attended 37 schools. He felt that education had nothing to do with his farm worker, migrant way of life. In 1942, he graduated from 8th grade. Because his father, Libardo, had been in an accident, and because he did not want his mother, Juana, to work in the fields, he could not go to high school, and instead became a migrant farm worker. While his childhood school education was not the best, later in life, education was his passion. The walls of his office in La Paz, United Farm Worker Headquarters, are lined with hundreds of books ranging from philosophy, economics, cooperatives, and unions, to biographies on Gandhi and the Kennedys. He believed that the end of all education should surely be service to others, a belief that he practiced until his untimely death. He joined the U.S. Navy, which was then segregated in 1946, at the age of 19, and he served for 2 years. In 1948, Cesar married Helen Fabla. They honeymooned in California by visiting all the California missions, from Sonoma to San Diego, again the influence of education. They settled in Delano and started their family. First Fernando, then Sylvia, then Linda, and 5 more children were to follow. Cesar returned to San Jose, where he met and was influenced by Father Donald McDonald. They talked about farm workers and strikes. Cesar began reading about St. Francis and Gandhi and nonviolence. After Father McDonald came another very influential person, Fred Ross. Cesar became an organizer for Ross's organization, the Community Service Organization, CSO. His first task was voter registration. In 1962, Cesar founded the National Farm Workers Association, later to become the United Farm Workers, the UFW. He was joined by Dolores Huerta, and the union was born. That same year, Richard Chavez designed the UFW Eagle, and Cesar chose the black and red colors. Cesar told the story of the birth of the eagle. He asked Richard to design the flag, but Richard could not make an eagle that he liked. Finally, he sketched one on a piece of brown wrapping paper. He then squared off the wing edges so that the eagle would be easier for Union members to draw on the handmade red flags that would give courage to farm workers with their own powerful symbol. Cesar made reference to the flag by stating a symbol is an important thing. That is why we chose an Aztec eagle. It gives pride. When people see it, they know it means dignity. For a long time in 1962, there were very few Union dues-paying members. By 1970, the UFW got grape growers to accept Union contracts and had effectively organized most of that industry. At one point in time, claiming 50,000 dues-paying members. The reason was Cesar Chavez's tireless leadership and nonviolent tactics that included the Delano grape strike, his fasts that focused national attention on farm workers' problems, and the 340-mile march from Delano to Sacramento in 1966. The farm workers and supporters carried banners with black eagles on them, with Huelga, strike, and Viva la Causa, long live our cause. The marchers wanted the state government to pass laws which would permit farm workers to organize into a union and allow collective bargaining agreements. Cesar made people aware of the struggles of farm workers for better pay and safer working conditions. He succeeded through nonviolent tactics, boycotts, pickets, and strikes. Cesar Chavez and the union sought recognition of the importance and dignity of all farm workers. It was the beginning of La Causa, a cause that was supported by organized labor, religious groups, minorities, and students. Cesar Chavez had the foresight to train his union workers and then to send many of them into cities where they were to use the boycott and picket as their weapons. Cesar was willing to sacrifice his own life so that the union would continue and that violence was not used. Cesar fasted many times. In 1968, Cesar went on a water-only 25-day fast. He repeated the fast in 1972 for 24 days, and again in 1988, this time for 36 days. What motivated him to do this? He said, "Farm workers everywhere are angry and worried that we cannot win without violence. We have proved it before through persistence, hard work, faith, and willingness to sacrifice. We can win and keep our own self-respect and build a great union that will secure the spirit of all people if we do it through a rededication and recommitment to the struggle for justice through nonviolence." Many events precipitated the fast, especially the terrible suffering of the farm workers and their children, the crushing of farm workers' rights, the dangers of pesticides, and the denial of fair and free elections. Cesar said about the fast, "A fast is first and foremost personal. It is a fast for the purification of my own body, mind, and soul. The fast is also a heartfelt prayer for purification and strengthening for all those who work beside me in the farm worker movement. The fast is a Sloan act of penance for those in positions of moral authority and for all men and women activists who know what is right and just, who know they could and should do more. The fast is finally a declaration of non-cooperation with supermarkets who promote and sell and profit from California table grapes. During the past few years, I have been studying the plague of pesticides on our land and our food." Cesar continued, "The evil is far greater than even I had thought it to be. It threatens to choke out the life of our people and also the life system that supports us all. The solution to this deadly crisis will not be found in the arrogance of the powerful, but in solidarity with the weak and helpless. I pray to God that this fast will be a preparation for a multitude of simple deeds for justice, carried out by men and women whose hearts are focused on the suffering of the poor and who yearn with us for a better world. Together, all things are possible." Cesar Chavez completed his 36-day fast for life on August 21, 1988. The Reverend Justus Jackson took up where Cesar left off, fasting on water for 3 days before passing on the fast to celebrities and leaders. Cesar Estrada Chavez died peacefully in his sleep on April 23, 1993, near Yuma, Arizona, a short distance from the small family farm in the Gila River Valley where he was born more than 66 years before. The founder and president of the United Farm Workers of America, AFL-CIO, was in Yuma helping UFW attorneys defend the union against a lawsuit brought by Bruce Church Inc., a giant Salinas, California-based lettuce and vegetable producer. Church demanded that the farm workers pay millions of dollars in damages resulting from a UFW boycott of its lettuce during the 1980s. Rather than bring the legal action in a state where the boycott actually took place, such as California or New York, Church shopped around for a friendly court in conservative, agribusiness-dominated Arizona, where there had been no boycott activity. Cesar gave his last ounce of strength defending the farm workers in this case, stated his successor, UFW President Arturo Rodriguez, who was with him in Arizona during the trial. He died standing up for the First Amendment right to speak out for themselves. He believed in his heart that the farm workers were right in boycotting Bruce Church Inc. lettuce during the 1980s, and he was determined to prove that in court. When the second multi-million-dollar judgment for Church was later thrown out by an appeals court, the company signed a UFW contract in May 1996. After the trial receded at about 3 p.m. on Thursday, April 22nd, Cesar spent part of the afternoon driving through Latino neighborhoods in Yuma that he knew as a child. Many Chavezes still lived in the area. He arrived at about 6 p.m. in St. Louis, Arizona, about 20 miles from Yuma, at the modest concrete block home of Dolpha Maria Howe, a former farm worker and longtime friend. Cesar and 8 other UFW leaders and staff were staying at her house in a poor farm worker neighborhood not far from the Mexican border. Cesar ate dinner at around 9 p.m. and presided over a brief meeting to review the day's events. He had just finished 2 days of often grueling examination by attorneys for Bruce Church Inc. He talked to his colleagues about taking care of themselves, a recent recurring theme with Cesar because he was well aware of the long hours required from him and other union officers and staff. Still, he was in good spirits despite being exhausted after prolonged questioning on the witness stand. He complained about feeling some weakness when doing his evening exercises. The UFW founder went to bed at around 10 or 10:30 p.m. A union staff member said he later saw a reading light shining from Cesar's room. The light was still on at 6 a.m. the next morning. That was not seen as unusual, though. Cesar usually woke up in the early hours of the morning, well before dawn, to read, write, or meditate. When he had not come out by 9 a.m., his colleagues entered his bedroom and found that Cesar had died, apparently, according to authorities, at night in his sleep. He was found lying on his back with his head turned to the left. His shoes were off and he still wore his clothes from the day before. In his right hand was a book on Native American crafts. There was a peaceful smile on his face. On April 29, 1993, Cesar Estrada Chavez was honored in death by those he led in life. More than 50,000 mourners came to honor the charismatic labor leader at the site of his first public fast in 1968 and his last in 1988, the Union Farm Workers Delano Field Office at 40 acres. It was the largest funeral of any labor leader in the history of the United States. They came in caravans from Florida to California to pay respect to a man whose strength was in his simplicity. Farm workers, family members, friends, and union staff took turns standing vigil over the plain pine coffin which held the body of Cesar Chavez. Among the honor guard were many celebrities who had supported Chavez throughout his years of struggle to better the lot of farm workers throughout America. Many of the mourners had marched side by side with Chavez during his tumultuous years in the vineyards and farms of America. For the last time, they came to march by the side of the man who had taught them to stand up for their rights, through nonviolent protest and collective bargaining. The death of Chavez marked an era of dramatic changes in American agriculture. His contributions would be eroded, and others would have to shoulder the burden of his work. But Cesar Chavez, who insisted that those who labor in the earth were entitled to share fairly in the rewards of their toil, would never be forgotten. The body of Cesar Chavez was taken to La Paz, the UFW's California headquarters, by his family and UFW leadership. He was laid to rest near a bed of roses in front of his office. On August 8, 1994, at a White House ceremony, Helen Chavez, Cesar's widow, accepted the Medal of Freedom for her late husband from President Clinton. In the citation accompanying America's highest civilian honor, which was awarded posthumously, the president lauded Chavez for having faced formidable, often violent opposition with dignity and nonviolence. And he was victorious. Cesar Chavez left our world better than he found it, and his legacy inspires us still. He was for his own people as a Moses figure, the president declared. The farm workers who labored in the fields and yearned for respect and self-sufficiency pinned their hopes on this remarkable man, who, with faith and discipline, soft-spoken humility, and amazing inner strength, led a very courageous life. During his lifetime, Chavez never earned more than $5,000 a year. The late Senator Robert Kennedy called him one of the heroic figures of our time. Thanks for watching!